Over 40 years have passed since World War II ended, and for many, it is now just another page in a history book. But for some of the men and women who fought in that war, the memories and the loyalties to fellow comrades are still very much alive. It was this loyalty and concern that brought a group of Vancouver's veterans together to help the more than 900 fellow veterans living in the Downtown Eastside. Some of these veterans lived in the worst accommodation the city had to offer. A number were actually homeless and living on the street. After seeing the living conditions of their comrades who resided in this area of the city, it was felt that something had to be done. Out of this concern grew an organization called the Veterans Memorial Housing Society. They drew their members from both the Royal Canadian Legion, the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans Association, and assistance from the war amputations. It was the first time that the two great veterans associations have cooperated in a joint project of this nature. Frank Bryan is president of Veterans Memorial Housing Society. Frank was a member of the RCMP for 30 years, during which time he served in World War II. He has served on the board of directors since the inception of the society.
My personal satisfaction of being a member of the Veterans Memorial Society, besides seeing that the veterans needed a better place to stay, has been the cooperation of the Army and Navy, the Legion, the War Amps, and other veterans organizations. They all seem to enjoy and feel the need was there and work together so well that it's something that I don't think has happened in Vancouver, at least, and for a long time, and everybody cooperated well. I was first the secretary of the organization, and as such I was in correspondence both with units, branches, and other people, besides a lot of civilians who saw the need and felt that they too could contribute both in money and with help to make sure that the veterans lived as well as they could. These veterans were sort of identified with the Downtown Eastside area, and they choose to live there. We don't quarrel with this. We don't wish to impose on them any lifestyle. We just wish that we can make them a little more comfortable and feel a part of society without interfering with their personal wishes in any case.
Stuart Kelly is the administrator of Veterans Memorial Manor. Stuart is the past president of the Veterans Memorial Housing Society. He was one of the first individuals to express concern about the conditions of veterans on the East Side.
This is an exciting project. We've had a lot of interesting comments from local people, from governments, from municipalities, everybody who's come to visit our lovely building here that was constructed for the veterans. And we call it a hardcore type of veteran, but really I suppose we should think of them as the boys who have been forgotten. And we are a little amiss in perhaps taking so long to build a building for them. At least we have it here now, and it's the first building of its kind in Canada. The boys that we are getting here are the vets who have lived in the hovels. They've been ripped off by unscrupulous landlords. Nobody seemed to care for them. Their health has deteriorated, and we felt there was a real need for this type of accommodation here in Vancouver. So we rolled up our sleeves, and I'm happy to tell you that this, over a period of 3 years, has developed into a project that we are proud of. We have 136 veterans in this building. They're good fun guys. They're hard drinking guys. They, I think, understand what it's all about now. The trauma of moving in here was amazing because of the fact that living in hovels such as Skid Row areas, they found it, I think, a little difficult to adjust for the first week. But now the boys are getting into it, and they're taking a pride in their building. They're taking a pride in themselves. And I think this is the first step to redeeming the dignity that which we want to achieve with these vets.
Their first priority was to provide decent, clean accommodations for their less fortunate comrades. Other priorities were to ensure availability of nutritious and reasonably priced meals, as well as some sort of activity center. The goal was to provide clean, secure accommodations for these residents in the area where they lived and called home without asking them to alter their lifestyles. Fred Wynne is a director of Veterans Memorial Housing Society. Fred is president of the Royal Canadian Legion Pacific Command. He is presently involved in chairing numerous veterans programs and services.
After being approached by Mr. Lutkus as to the possibility of putting some kind of accommodation into the Skid Road area, having no knowledge whatsoever as to what was going on other than the fact that I had driven through there many, many times and saw the people walking back and forth on the streets, we got together and a group of us decided that we would go and have a look at the accommodation that was provided by the various hotels and rooming houses in the area. Under the aegis of a counselor from the Department of Veterans Affairs, we proceeded to go to places that were the rooming houses of the veterans that were being looked after by the department. We went into one hotel and proceeded to the third floor, where the counselor introduced us to one of the veterans who was living in an 8-by-10 room, and the place was absolutely filthy. As a matter of fact, I more or less figured that they cleaned it up with a shovel because it was in such disgusting conditions. We came out of there and proceeded to another veteran's accommodation, and this veteran, when we knocked on the door, there was a rumble behind the door, and we finally found out the only way that we could get in was when he moved the bed away from the door so that we could enter into his room. The room was in complete darkness. The individual we were talking to was blind, and of course this didn't bother him at all, but it certainly bothered us. There was no room to sit down, and moving the bed away from the door so that we could get in, he had pushed it into the clothes closet, and he was sitting on the bed festooned with his one shirt and 2 pairs of pants that he owned. We came out of there and went into various other places where the situation was exactly the same, and then we were given the opportunity of talking to one veteran who had no accommodation at all, refused to go into what he called rat traps, and was at that time sleeping in a sewer pipe. It was summertime, and the weather for the West Coast was very, very good. Immediately we finished with our guided tour, we got together and said that this was an impossibility, that there was no way that these individuals, of which we were given to understand there was in the neighborhood of 300, would have to exist in accommodation like that. They were getting a reasonable amount of money for more veterans allowance, etc. But these landlords were utilizing the fact that nobody else would take these veterans to take all the money they possibly could from them and give them accommodation that you literally would not allow your dog to live in. I went back to the Royal Canadian Legion, and I know that Warren went back to the Army, Navy, Air Force, and we presented our thoughts regarding what we could do for these veterans in this area. So this is where we got together and formed the Veterans Memorial Housing Society, and from there on we, as you probably heard previously, went on to finally get the building together that we have now.
Evelyn Salary is director of Club 44. She has held this position for 10 years, previous to which she was involved with the YWCA and the Social Planning Department of the City of Vancouver.
This is our new recreation department. We're trying to fit as many people in it as possible. We've got a new pool table for them, as you will see in one of the other shots. And we are very, very happy in this building.
With the cooperation and assistance of Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, who provided capital funding for the project, Veterans Affairs Canada, and the City of Vancouver, who purchased the land for the society, a unique project was developed. It is one that serves as an example of what can be accomplished when old comrades remember and are determined to do something. The Honorable Harold Green served as Secretary of State for External Affairs in the Diefenbaker government in 1959. Mr. Green officiated at the sod turning on November 15, 1986, along with Arthur Westmoreland, the eldest member in the Army, Navy, and Air Force veterans in Canada.
I think it's a wonderful idea that you have here, getting this accommodation for the veterans who are in a bad position. And as our ranks grow thinner and thinner, it's going to be more and more important that those who remain do everything they can to help the veterans who are in trouble. We haven't finished the job yet. We had the Veterans Charter and I think pretty good veterans legislation and pretty good show all around in Canada so far as the Veterans Affairs are concerned. And now I suggest to you it's still very, very important because of the fact that there are so few left on both sides, so few in trouble and so few to help them out. So don't give up your good efforts. I think this is a wonderful thing you're doing in arranging this housing. Very interested because I was Minister of Public Works for 2 years and we had CMHC under us. And I'm sure they'll give you good help. But don't stop working. That's the point I'd like to make, that fewer veterans and fewer to help. And the help is needed just as badly or more so than it's ever been. And thank you today very, very much for this honor. One of the nicest things that's happened in my lifetime. To give me a life membership in the new society. Good luck to you with your work, and I'm sure you'll do a grand job. Thank you very much.
John Vukovic is a resident of Veterans Memorial Manor. John served with the Yugoslavian forces during World War II. He was one of the first residents of the manor.
Well, war veteran was good to me. They give me this apartment in this building, and this building is a brand new building. It's about 130 units, and it's very inconvenient because it's a shopping all the way around for us people on wheelchairs, and I like very much to be around and to be in here. An apartment is heated in the winter time, and electricity is paid for, and I don't pay very much for it, and I appreciated what the war veterans did for me.
The project is a 134-unit building on 5 floors, designed to serve a wide cross-section of homeless and hard-to-house veterans from the Downtown Eastside. 8 of the units on the first floor receive 24-hour supervision and aim at accommodating residents with the most severe problems. Elsewhere, the degree of supervision varies from floor to floor within the project according to the needs of the residents. Olga Greenwell is a director of Veterans Memorial Housing Society. Olga is presently Regional Nursing Advisor for the Pacific Region for Veterans Affairs Canada. Previous to that, she coordinated nursing rehabilitation and administration at the George Derby Center in Burnaby.
Most of these men have lived their lives in the woods, either logging or fishing, and they have not made any connections in society at all. For many of them, they were married, but they are now on their own, and they have to find their own way in life. So having lived in all the Skid Row hotels for a long time, we now have a group of men who, for the first time, have a nice place to live, and we begin to build them into normal people. One of the things about this building is that we have Club 44 next door. And for the men who do not wish to cook, they can go into Club 44 and buy a meal, or they can do their own cooking in their rooms, but it is a choice that they have. The other thing about it for them is that for the first time we can get all of the services that people have in the community. If they need long-term care, people will come in and look after them. If they can have a homemaker, we're able to bring those people in as well. So altogether, we're hoping to give these men the same opportunities as people in the normal community have. One of the difficulties for us was selecting who would come in here. We have approximately 1,000 men in this area, veterans who, in some way or another, are connected with the Department of Veterans Affairs. First of all, we had to decide who needed the housing. Were they living in deplorable situations? Could we get them to be sober long enough for us to fill out an application form and see if they wanted to come in here? Then we had to go back and find them again and get them to give notice and come in, and that was a very difficult thing because, as I mentioned to you, these men haven't been accustomed to living like we do. It was time-consuming and very rewarding because during that time we were able to find out what they would need from a health point of view. First of all, many of them are older. They have many chronic health problems. Many of them have a drinking problem. And during all of those interviews that we had with them, we were able to decide who needed what. Now, long-term care come in and give us the same services that they would to anyone else. We weren't able to ask them to do this before because they lived in such terrible places that no one would want to go in to do what was needed for them. For me now, if we can have the men cared for and looked after for a year, I am sure we will begin to see changes in their behavior, and that is the whole point of the project for me.
The events leading up to the opening of Veterans Memorial Manor spawned a period of 4 years. They included meetings of concerned veterans from the Royal Canadian Legion and the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans of Canada, completion by Veterans Affairs of a survey of veterans living in the area to clarify the scope of the problem, formation of a non-profit housing society which was provincially incorporated, development of a functional program to outline the proposal, meetings with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, the City of Vancouver, and architects, acquisition of the land on which to build, approval for funding at various stages of the project, and the choosing of a construction company. Bill Lutkus is Regional Director General, Department of Veteran Affairs. Bill has been associated with the project since its conception. The Department of Veteran Affairs has been instrumental in providing support for the project under the research aspect of the Veterans Independence Program.
One of the important elements in putting a project of this sort together is the development of a functional program. This was one of the first items that the society funded or decided to do. What a functional program is a detailed plan of exactly what the society plans to do and the approach that they're going to take in achieving their end. In order to accomplish a document of this sort, it's necessary to employ a consultant who is an expert in this area. And fortunately, one of the units of the Army, Navy, and Air Force put up the money in order to hire this consultant early on in the process. And this was the initial success which gave the organization the confidence to carry on and the confidence that they had the support of the veterans organizations in the Lower Mainland area. One of the benefits that we've had in addition to public funding is a large amount of private funding from the Royal Canadian Legion and their Ladies Auxiliary, from the units of the Army, Navy, and Air Force veterans and their Ladies Auxiliary. The War Amputations of Canada, for example, has provided the funding to furnish all of the handicapped suites in the facility.
The culmination of all this work and planning came with the official opening of the Memorial Manor by the Minister of Veteran Affairs, the Honorable George Hees, on the 27th of August, 1986. The project is now complete and represents many long hours of hard work by many individuals, branches, and units. The idea to create a better way of life, to strengthen personal dignity, and provide a home for the homeless and the hard to house has become a reality in Vancouver's Downtown Eastside. Warren Matheson is a director of Veterans Memorial Housing Society. Warren is provincial president of the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans in Canada. He has been involved with the society since its inception.
The project here today houses 134 of these people. There's need for more. The mayor of the city, Mayor Mike Harcourt, and several of the aldermen have
approached us that perhaps we would like to take on another project of this sort, but we're taking a little breather here before we get involved in another one. And we feel that this one has been very successful. It took us 4 or 5 days to fill the place to capacity, and as you can see, having wandered through the building, that it's really a moving operation. And we hope that it's the first of its kind. It is a pilot type in Canada. There hasn't been another one built like this, and we hope that this is the first of many to come.
Ralph Piccola is a resident of Veterans Memorial Manor. He was in the Navy during World War II and served in the North Atlantic. Previous to moving into Veterans Memorial Manor, Ralph lived for 4 years in less than desirable accommodations.
I moved into Veterans Memorial Housing on the 25th of September. I believe it was the first day of opening. I can't describe how wonderful it is. The facilities that you are equipped with, all brand new, wonderful stoves, fridges, and it's economical, truly economical. You feel guilty with the rental that you pay and what you receive. Cleanly, well, of course it's brand new, but I know it will be. The halls are wax shined and everything's just perfect. There's no other way to describe. If I was a conceited idiot or something like that, I couldn't even find words then to say anything against it or whatever. No, I haven't met anyone in all of the fellows that have been here that aren't laughing with joy. I won't move until the big fellow upstairs moves me.